Good evening slash morning, everybody. I am recording this at midnight on Thursday, January 15th, where right now in Minneapolis, Minnesota, ICE has shot another person in Minneapolis. I believe that this person has suffered non-life-threatening injuries, thank goodness. But that's the kind of the context that I'm recording this video in. My name is Emma. I am with the Reinvestigation Workgroup. We are a group of volunteer investigators in Minnesota. We examine cases of police killing in Minnesota, as well as we're starting to do so across the nation. And we started doing this in about 2018, and we've looked at over 20 cases thus far. We're not attorneys. We're not use of force experts or police experts. We're just a group of people in Minneapolis and throughout the state of Minnesota who really care about policing and want to do better and try to do better by people who are policed and people who do policing. So we have put together this slideshow about justice for Marcus Golden and justice for Renee Good. For those who don't know who Marcus Golden is, Marcus Golden was killed by the St. Paul Police Department about 11 years ago to the day. And his case is very similar to what happened to Renee Nicole Good. And so we put this together for a press conference today about Marcus. But this video that I'm doing now really is about what happened to Renee Nicole Good from our perspective as the Reinvestigation Work Group. And I'm just the one filming this video, but I'm just a representative of our work group, and the contents of this analysis and this presentation is from our entire team, and not just myself. So, like I said, I put this slideshow together for another press conference, so I'm just going to kind of skip through some slides. But it is very important to note that today slash yesterday really marks 1 week since Renee Nicole Good was killed by ICE agent Johnathan Ross in South Minneapolis. And again, I'm going to skip through some of the stuff here about Marcus's case, and we're going to go to what happened on the morning of January 7th, 2026. So that morning, Renee Nicole Good was with her partner. Renee was a 37-year-old mother. She had just dropped off her son at school, which was a few blocks away from where she and her wife lived in South Minneapolis. And that morning, the neighbors in the area of where Renee and her wife lived, and as well as where her child went to school, neighbors were already on alert about ICE being in the area. And so that morning, Renee was driving down Portland Avenue, which is a fairly busy street in South Minneapolis. And we've all, I'm sure, seen now some of the video footage circulating about what happened in the few moments prior to Renee being killed. So this video and the still here that you'll see, but we're going to play the video in a second. The footage shows that Renee's Honda Pilot was stopped diagonally on Portland Avenue. And for people who don't know, Portland has some parking lanes and then a bike lane. It's a very wide street. And so Renee was parked kind of diagonally on Portland Avenue. And you can see in the video that she kind of parks that way, and then she's waving other vehicles to kind of drive past her. And you do see other vehicles go through, including ICE agent Johnathan Ross's car. His car drives in front of her, and then it goes and it parks to the right of her. What you also see in the video footage that's out there is that there's a large gray pickup truck with the driver's side door left open after the agent had got out of it. He left the driver's side door open. So that large gray pickup truck pulls up to the left of Renee. It parks in the street. And then there's a blue car also positioned to the left of Renee's car. And those two block her in from the left side. You then will see in the video that Agent Ross, has already parked his SUV to the right of Renee's car, and he also left his driver's side door open. The reason why we point out these positioning and things, and you can see it in the still that we have on the screen here, is that blue car is here, the gray pickup's here, the doors open here, and then the doors open here, and here's Renee's car. So Renee's vehicle was blocked in. She was unable to turn to the left whatsoever because of the cars to the left of her, and Agent Ross's car was really impeding her from turning to the right easily. And this becomes important when you watch the video about, why is Renee even backing up in the first place, and explain some of her movements. So I'm going to play now a clip from her. So again, you see that those two cars are parked. They are blocking her from the left side. That agent gets out. He goes up to the vehicle. And we paused it here just to kind of show again, this is like the full totality of the circumstances about what the officers knew. They knew that they had obviously parked their own cars right there. They knew that this other agent was parked on the other side of her. And this was a situation that Renee was in and that the agents were in when they all approached. And why this is important is because of something called totality of the circumstances. So when an officer's use of force is analyzed, it's analyzed within the totality of the circumstances, within all of the facts and all of these other things that the officers were aware of at the time that deadly force was used. And there was a recent Supreme Court decision called Barnes v. Felix, which really clarified for us that there's no time limit on that totality of the circumstances analysis. You can't just narrow down to the precise moment that deadly force was used and only look at the force within those few seconds. What Barnes v. Felix said is that you have to look at it through the lens of all of the facts and circumstances known to the officers at the time. Prior events that may have, um, you know, may be spun to be a person being threatening could also be viewed as innocuous behavior. That's what that Supreme Court decision said. Okay, so again, we want to point out that these driver's side doors were left open on the gray pickup and on Ross's SUV, and that Renee's car was blocked in by the blue car and the gray pickup on the left side. All right. So another thing to point out about the initial approach is that you have at least 3 masked federal agents approaching Renee's vehicle. So you can't really see it in the beginning of this clip that just played, and I'll play it again, but you can see that Ross is that third agent that's on the other side. So I'll play that again. So they get out, they approach the vehicle. Okay. And so then kind of what happens next. And so I'm sure we've all seen at this point in time the footage that has come out from Agent Johnathan Ross's cell phone that he had in his hand. So again, we're going to play the clip, but here's kind of a walkthrough of what happens. Ross, he exits his vehicle. He's holding a phone in his hand. The agents don't have body cams, and we've seen there's like reflections of him in the vehicle. It's clearly a phone in his hand. So he gets out of his vehicle and he does a full circle 360 around Renee Good's SUV. So as Renee Good is backing up her vehicle, in the video, you'll see that the first time she backs up her vehicle is when Agent Ross walks in front of her car. So that's the first time that Agent Ross is walking in front of a moving car. And this point in time, she is backing up. So Ross walks in front and then he goes to the driver's side and he interacts with Renee. She's calm, she's non-confrontational. She says, "I'm fine. That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Ross then moves to the rear of the vehicle where he films Renee's license plate and where Renee's wife is questioning him from outside of the car. So the wife and Agent Ross, um, kind of have a back and forth. And then while Ross is on that passenger side interacting with the wife, you see that there's another ICE agent that's approaching Renee on the driver's side. And that agent goes over to Renee and tells her to get out of the vehicle. At that point in time, Ross then goes back to walk in front of the vehicle. And you will see again that this is the second time that Renee is backing her car up. And the reason why she's backing her car up, again, is because they have her boxed in that specific way with their vehicles. She could no longer turn her vehicle to the left because of the agent's cars that were there. And so she had to turn to the right. So you again can see this is a clip of the video. We don't have the audio playing, but this is just, you know, you can see what's going on here. He's going around to the back of the car. There's Renee's wife. He's going over to the side here. Okay. The agent's going over to tell Nicole to get out. And here you can see her begin to back the vehicle up. Okay, so as Ross then approached, Renee backed up her vehicle, and then you see her turning her steering wheel to the right, attempting to drive away from the agent because that other agent that had gone to her driver's side door was attempting to get into her car. So at this point in time, Ross has already positioned himself to the front side of the vehicle. He's kind of in the northwest area of the vehicle. He's not directly in the vehicle's path. He removes his firearm when Renee's wife yelled, "Drive, baby, drive." So as then Renee is turning the car to the right, Ross then places his hands on the hood of the vehicle and he braces himself against it, moving both his feet and legs away from the path of the car. He was almost like leaning against the car and seemed to be attempting to physically stop the car from moving. And that's a still here that you can see on the slide, and we have a little bit closer up of it. Again, he was seen almost leaning against the car, and he seemed to be attempting to physically stop the vehicle from moving. You can see his arms there are outstretched on the hood, and he's got his legs here kind of braced like that. So, as we all know, after Renee begins to turn her car, Ross then fires one shot that goes, he's kind of at the front fender, and that one shot went through the windshield approximately like 3 inches up from the side of the frame here, as you can see on the photo. And then he also fires two more shots through the driver's side window. And here is that video at half speed from his vehicle, or from his video. I'm just going to play that one more time. She's backing up. He's already to the side when she tries to maneuver around him. Not at him, around him. And this is from another angle here. She's backing that vehicle up. He's to the front side. And she, again, is trying to move that vehicle around the agents. But because Agent Ross had parked his vehicle where it was at and left the driver's side door open, she had only a small amount of room to try to make that right turn to drive away from them. Another huge thing that we want to point out after having done a lot of this work with analyzing police shootings, I should say that some of our cases have become successful through litigation. We did the investigative work for Cordell Handy's family. Cordell Handy was killed by the St. Paul Police Department. His family took that case all the way to trial. They actually went to two separate civil jury trials. They ended up winning. The first verdict was an $11.5 million jury verdict. The judge then decided to reduce that amount, saying that he did not believe that Cordell's life was worth that much. He tried to reduce it to $2.5 million. The family said no. They went to a second trial where the family walked away with over $7 million by the end of all of the calculations. And so we have done a lot of work for families and getting this stuff across the finish line. And one of the things that we want to point out is that the standard for whether or not an officer used excessive force is not about what Johnathan Ross himself subjectively saw and perceived and feared. What the standard is what an objectively reasonable officer in the same scene with the same facts and circumstances would have done. And there's two other agents that were standing right next to Johnathan Ross when he used deadly force. Both of these agents, neither of them decided to pull their guns or to use their weapon whatsoever. And those two knew the same things that Johnathan Ross did. So our question is why didn't these two other officers feel that deadly force was appropriate? Why was it only Johnathan Ross? You know, you have these two officers. Why didn't they use deadly force? And we think that's a very important point, and that's been an important point in other cases that have resulted in at least criminal charges across the country. For example, Jason Van Dyke was the officer who shot and killed Laquan McDonald 16 times. And in that case, Jason Van Dyke was the only officer who drew a weapon and shot and fired at Laquan McDonald. And there were other officers on the scene that did not. And so our question really is how was what Johnathan Ross did reasonable if the other two officers did not decide to use deadly force? So just kind of in conclusion, that's our analysis thus far of what has happened to Renee Nicole Good. We want to really point out that when Renee was shot, she was trying to drive around the officers and away from them. She did not pose an imminent threat. A reasonable police officer would not believe that her actions, knowing that these officers purposefully blocked her in that way, there's no way a reasonable officer would believe that she posed an actual imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to these officers. And, you know, another thing that I'd be remiss if we didn't point out is that it is against all policing best practices and policies to stand in front of a vehicle, whether or not it's moving or not, but especially if it's a moving vehicle. Most dangerous places of a vehicle are directly in front and directly behind. And this is taught, you know, across the board to law enforcement. Do not stand in front of a car and do not stand behind it. And there has been some reports that have come out that Johnathan Ross was working for ICE, Customs and Border Patrol at a time, I believe, between like 2005 and 2017, I believe, that ICE and Border Patrol were purposefully standing in front of moving vehicles so that they could create a justification to use deadly force. And Johnathan Ross was working for them during that time. And that's very concerning from you know, all sorts of standpoints, but especially from a policing best practices standpoint. And so again, to reiterate that Renee Nicole Good did not pose a imminent threat to anybody. The ICE agent has claimed self-defense, and the Trump administration has doubled down on that. But the forensic and the video evidence, or at least the video evidence that we've seen thus far, really contradicts that claim. And in this case, as well as Marcus Golden's case, which you should go check out if this has been interesting to you, officers created or escalated the danger and then used that danger they created to justify deadly force. And in both cases, the victims of law enforcement murder were villainized after their death to excuse that unlawful conduct. So, you know, we really believe that there needs to be accountability for what happened to Renee Nicole Good. This is not something new. The family of Marcus Golden was out there protesting in 2015. We saw all of you know, the global outrage and outpour after what happened to George Floyd in 2020, and now here we are again in 2026 calling for justice for Renee. And so it's really time. These protests go way back before even these cases within the last decade. And so it is really now time for real meaningful change. And we believe that that first step comes with criminal charges against Agent Johnathan Ross. And we also believe that more steps need to be taken, including passing what's called the Minnesota Civil Remedies Act, which is a bill that the Minnesota Justice Coalition is bringing here in Minnesota in partnership with some other, you know, groups like Impacted Siblings Take Action and the Dante Kobe Nobel Rights Initiative here in the state of Minnesota. And we are really trying to create what's called a state-based civil rights claim that will allow us to bring civil rights claims in state court when government officials violate your civil rights. And this bill would expressly prohibit qualified immunity, which is a special protection that's given to government agents when they violate someone's civil rights that essentially kicks their case out of court. And so we're trying to bring this. It's, been long overdue that we need these states-based civil rights claims because as many of us who pay attention to these kind of things know the federal civil rights claims just aren't surviving and they're kicking out meritorious claims because of this thing called qualified immunity. But again, I could go on about that for a whole hour. And so we'll end it here. But thank you all for those who tuned in to hear our analysis of what happened to Renee Nicole Good. If you want to learn more about the work that we do, we investigationgroup.com. You can donate to support our work. Again, we're all volunteers, so that money goes directly to paying for use of force experts, forensic experts, audio and video experts to try to help families understand what happened when their loved one gets killed by law enforcement. So please support that work. If you are interested, if you want to reach out, please do. Thank you.